Hello guys, welcome to the next session of new word of Dynamics CRM. Uh, in my current session, actually in the past session, in fact, I talked about some of the implementation challenges we face when we try to implement SLA in Dynamics CRM. Uh, we typically talked about what are the conditions when SLA can get cancelled, and how do you select different working hours for the same type of SLA depending on, it's a critical or emergency case or different kind of case. So those things I have already covered in the part 1 of the session, which you can see at my YouTube video. Today I am going to cover the remaining 3 challenges I listed in my session, and we'll go and see how can we resolve those challenges. Um, Before we go in depth about these different challenges, again I have some prerequisite from my I need some prerequisite from my audience. You should have understanding of Dynamics CRM, and at least you should know how to navigate and configure, do basic configuration. You should understand the fundamentals of SLA, and same time you should understand how SLA works with entitlement for the right kind of SLA selection. Uh, if you don't know these topics, I will say first go and read from somewhere or use my previous videos. But if you understand, you're good to go for this session. So let's move next. So the other 3 topics which I'm going to talk about today is some of the challenges you see when creating reports around SLAs, how to configure parallel and sequential SLAs, what limitations come in that, and how to overcome that, or even we can overcome that. I mean, yeah, few things cannot be done, right? How to pause and stop SLA. To be honest, probably this is probably the weakest area in Dynamics CRM 2013 SP1. Remember SP1. In 15 it is changing, but yeah, we'll talk about that. So let's start with the first one. What challenges you see in SLA reporting. So let's see some of the typical reporting asks from the SLA point of view. People will talk about, show me how many cases are in warning stage. That means they are about to fail, or they have crossed the warning stage, right? SLA fail rate, success rate. People want to know when my SLA failed or passed, how much early it was completed or how much slippage it had, those kind of things. Now, one of the biggest misconception about SLA in Dynamics CRM is that SLA should be capturing this kind of data. Or say out-of-box SLA configuration should be capturing this kind of data. Unfortunately, the answer is no. Out-of-box SLA does not capture failed SLAs or successful SLAs or any kind of date time stamp to do different type of reporting and calculation. You have to create those kind of constructs. So it does provide a framework to have your sniffers, your reporting data to be captured, but ultimately you as an implementer has to go and capture that. SLA by itself will not provide any of this kind of data. So that's a misconception people live with, customers live with, which you have to go and correct. So let's see if these 4 are the requirements, then how you can do that. I mean, it's again very simple configuration, but let me share my experience so that you don't have to go through any of those learning curve from your side. Okay, so let's see. So and it's very obvious the solution is having some additional reporting fields on the case form, right? That's the solution, and then populating the right kind of data into these reporting fields, so that data can be used for reporting purpose. So what I did in my case are the 4 reporting queries I had earlier. What I did to implement that is that I added 4 I will say reporting fields on the case form. So they were like SLA warning, SLA failed, SLA passed, and SLA passed date time. So each of these first three flags they capture, they become yes if the SLA has passed through warning, failed, or no pass stage, and if it has passed through pass stage, at what date time it passed. So it is used for capturing that. Now how do I capture? So I created this field inside on the case form. I can keep it hidden, I can keep it visible, up to you, up to your implementation. In my case I kept it hidden. I'm just showing it here for the purpose of demo. So how do I populate it? The population is pretty simple. So for instance, if you remember when we configure SLA, when defining the failure and warning, actually you can define action for the failure and action for the warning. At those places I can go and update the case entity, and which is visible here in my screen, the second screen. So when I update it, for instance, if I'm updating for the failure, I'll simply go and set the flag of SLA to failed, okay? And if it is for warning, then I will set the flag of SLA warning to yes. So such kind of configuration you can do that, so that when SLA passes through these milestones of warning and failure, it sets the right kind of data on the case form, which is then used for reporting purpose. So if I do this kind of basic, if I have this kind of basic structure in place, I can very easily say that what is my, how many cases are in my warning stage. All I have to go and see the cases where SLA warning is yes, but it is not yet failed, right? That means not yet failed, not yet passed. That means it is still in the warning stage. Only it has caused the warning stage. So that's a simple query, right? And then you can use all your calculation and percentage and those kind of things. But this is how, these are the records you are interested in, right? Against the total record. Similarly, if I want to go and have some kind of calculation on the SLA fail rate, then all you have to go and see, show me all those cases where SLA has been failed. Simple, right? If SLA failed, those are my failed SLA cases. So you can see how you can have a simple flags on the case form, and then under the failure and success, you can set those values and then simply make them of use in your queries for reporting purpose. Now, so far so good. I mean, SLA does has a framework to define some kind of actions for the failure and some kind of actions for the warning. But what about success? How many are successful? And any kind of timestamp you want to capture around success. There is no success action as of now in Dynamics CRM 2013 SP1. Again, I am mentioning this version here because in that version it is not available, but it is available in the latter version, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In fact, I'm planning to a specific session on changes in SLA in Dynamics CRM 2015 sometime very soon. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if I have to capture some kind of such reporting timestamps or flags around when my SLAs become successful, how I do that, okay? The solution is again very simple, guys. So remember the success criteria was? The success criteria was that when the case is resolved, then I say my SLA is complete now, okay? So since there is no there is no success actions here, so I have to make use of workflow. So what we did, that we defined a workflow which runs our, say, it's called SLA success workflow, which works on the status change of the record, and there we go and check that if the case status is resolved, then I set certain properties on the case. And what I set? Same flags we saw earlier. So we set SLA passed equal to yes, and then we put the date time, right? At what time it passed. So again, you can see, since we don't have any kind of success actions defined for the SLA, we have to rely on an additional development of a workflow which will do this job for us. It's a little more work, but yeah, it works, right? So if I have this kind of thing and try to answer the remaining queries in the report, what are my success rate? Success rate is where my SLA has been passed, but it has not been failed. That means it has not come through failed to become pass. It has just passed without reaching the failed stage. Then it's a pure success case for me, right? Simple. Similarly, if you want to do some calculation regarding the timestamp, different timestamps, so let's assume that the applicable from was created on. That means all SLAs started tracking the time from the time of a record created, and the related case field was resolved by. That means the end time was the resolved by. If assuming this is the configuration, if now I want to see that did I completed my job before SLA target, or I slipped SLA target, and if yes, how much? If I need some kind of reporting on that, all I need to do is that resolve by shows me the expected end time, and SLA pass date time, the flag which I set in flag I set into case form using this workflow, that shows me the actual time when this SLA was this task was completed, okay, whether SLA met or not. Now, difference between these two things will show me whether this job was done before the resolve by time, before the target time, or it happened after the target time. Okay, simple. Then how long it took to pass the SLA stage? Again, very simple. The starting point is created on, and the actual ending point is SLA pass date time. So simply find the difference between these two timestamps to get to know how long it took to complete the job. So yeah, simple. So just gave you some very it's again real-time examples that what kind of reports people want, and what kind of extensions you might have to do on the case form to capture some data just for reporting purpose, making use of SLA framework, making use of workflows, and link it to the SLA conditions, and then use that data for the reporting purpose, right? So this was an example. Again, your requirement could be entirely different, and of course you have to go and do it your own way, right? But just to show some idea. Now let's go, before I go to next topic, in fact, yes, here's the great news. The great news is that now in Dynamics CRM 2015, when your success stage is passed, you can define the success activities as well. Just like failure actions and warning actions, which we saw in the earlier slide, we can also define the success action. Okay. So all this workflow we created to track the data and everything, it is gone. Now it is very much inside SLA. I can go and define the actions for when the job is successfully done. Okay. Again, as promised, very soon, the moment it becomes public and I am authorized to show these things in public to general audience, I will have a special session talking about what is new in SLA in Dynamics CRM 2015. So please stay tuned on for that. Okay. Meanwhile, let's move ahead. So next topic is running parallel and sequential SLAs. This is quite interesting topic and quite big topic actually. So let's talk about it. Okay. So let me. So when we try to configure parallel or sequential SLAs, we see some boundary condition. We see some limitations. I hesitate to use limitation, but that's how the SLA works. But we see some boundary condition which binds us to be able to implement it, or to able to implement it using some other tweaked way. Yeah, using a normal implementation to a tweaked implementation. Let's see the examples, and then probably you'll be able to relate it what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's Fox scenario. Remember the previous slide when I talked about one of the SLA challenges. I gave you one example that one ticket is resolved through various stages. For instance, from back office assignment to field engineer inspection to contractor assignment to ticket resolution. This is the same example I talked about in my previous session. Now there are two SLAs, one is SLA1 and second is SLA2 for 4 hours and 8 hours. Now these two SLAs start at the same time. Okay, so these are the cases where you have parallel SLAs. You can have more than one SLAs, 3, 4, 5, 10, how much you want, but they all start at the same time. And in this example, they all start when the ticket is created. Okay. Now such SLAs, though they are parallel, are very easy to implement inside Dynamics CRM SLA framework. Reason being, SLA framework boundary condition met these requirements. Okay, so if I have to implement this kind of parallel SLA, it's very simple. I will create one SLA which is applicable from the created on, because all the sub items of the SLA are starting from the same point. So created on, modified on, whatever you want to select as a starting point, you give that applicable from field. Then after that, I create multiple SLA items like SLA1 and SLA2, and I simply configure them for different time periods. Okay, simple. Everything happens inside SLA framework. So if I see this example over here, I define an SLA over here, which starts on this created on. It has two items, SLA1 and SLA2, and then both of them are configured over here with their respective time period and success and applicable when criteria. Very simple, very simple. And it is possible because both SLA are though parallel, but they are starting at the same time. Okay. One example which works out of box, no-brainer job. Let's go and see a little more complicated example of sequential and parallel SLAs. Second scenario, where let me mix some parallel and sequential SLAs in the same life cycle. Same example, ticket created to ticket resolved, which moves through various stages. Now one SLA starts on the created on. That means when a ticket is created, you want to see that within 4 hours contractor assignment happened or not. That's the first SLA. Starts on the created on. Now the second one starts when the contractor assignment happens. That means it is a different timestamp. It is some modified on condition on which this SLA starts. So applicable from, that means your counter starting point for the SLA1 was created on, but the counter starting point for SLA2 will be something entirely different, something in between the modified time, right? Some kind of modified time. Yeah, so that's there are two sequential SLAs, two SLAs starting at two different time. So different time is a challenge here. Sorry. Let's take a third scenario, sorry, where I have a parallel SLA. But again, this SLA is starting at a different time. So I see three SLA items over here. Sorry guys, which is starting at three different point of time. So starting time is different. Now such SLA cannot be configured inside such SLA items cannot be configured inside SLA. And why I say so? Because you must have seen, I'm sorry for all this stuff, you must have seen that when you define SLA, there is only one applicable from condition. That means your starting point has to be one, like in previous example. But here I have three different starting point. So this one I can implement inside SLA. SLA1 I can implement inside, for instance, SLA. So, in fact, one of them I can implement inside SLA, but rest I cannot. At least not together with that. Okay. You might recommend that, okay, why don't I go and create one created on based and one modified on based, or three different SLAs with three different modified on conditions. Well, you can do that, but keep in mind at one point of time only one SLA will be applicable, right? Whether you use the default mechanism to apply it or entitlement, only one SLA is applicable. So you cannot have three SLAs applicable at the same time. That's a challenge, right? So when we are doing this implementation in our customer case, we said, okay, fine, SLA one will use out of box features to implement, but SLA 2 and 3 we will do something else, and I will show you what we did that as something else. Okay, so what we actually did to implement SLA 2 and 3, you have to think back, and again I have talked about this thing many times earlier. Any SLA you define, actually it creates a wait workflow behind the scene, right? So any SLA is nothing but a wait workflow at the system level. I mean, if you go to settings, system job, you can see wait workflows running for different type of SLAs you have configured and which are applied, right? So what we'll do, SLA1 will simply go and create using SLA framework, but for SLA 2 and 3 we will use wait workflow. I mean, yeah, simple normal wait workflow. Will go configure it and get the job done. Okay. Again, you will not. It's not. I mean, yeah. So the bottom line is that the whole this whole requirement cannot be implemented inside SLA framework. Part of this has to be done inside SLA framework. Part has to be done using traditional mechanism of using wait workflows and so on. Let's take the example. If I implement this example, so first thing first, SLA1 is pretty simple, right? I go say SLA for ticket handling started on the created on, and then I added this SLA1 details, and my job is done, right? Now here SLA 2 and 3 I cannot, so if you look at the SLA items, it's only one SLA item, right? If you see over here, I'm putting a mouse here, only one SLA item over here. I didn't put SLA 2 and 3 here, because if I put SLA 2 and 3 here, that means they will also start on the created on time at the same time, which is not the case. They are starting at different point of time. So, and that's the challenge I have, that's a limitation I have from the SLA framework. So what I did, then for SLA 2, we created a wait workflow. And this is how the wait workflow look like. We created SLA 2 wait workflow for 4 hours. Record field changed. Then I simply start putting the criteria that if it has, so starting point is that if the case has reached to the contractor assignment stage, if that is the case, then for 2 hours I wait for warning time, and then in 2 hours, if case is not resolved, I simply set the case property, and when I set the case property, I set the same SLA passed, failed, those kind of parameters, right? So here in this case, I'll set the SLA warning parameter, the same reporting parameter. Then comes your failure stage, and in failure stage, I simply go and wait for 4 hours and then set the failure stage. Similarly, I can go and define the success stage as well. I mean, definitely, if it goes through none of these stages, of course, it will go and pass the success stage. Okay, and I can put a condition for that. Okay, so this was SLA 2. SLA 3 is the similar SLA, same kind of parallel SLA 3 contractor assignment complete. Only thing changes is my starting point changes, because now it is happening at different point of time, which is my failed engineer inspection is assigned, and then it goes for 1 hour of warning time, and then 2 hours or 3 hours of failure time. So you can see in this example that basically you have to mix your solution using 2 different mechanisms to get the job done. If you have parallel or sequential SLAs which are starting at 2 different point of time. But ultimately, even if I'm using workflow, I'm going to populate the same reporting parameters which I have been configuring inside my SLA framework to capture the right kind of data for me to see what SLAs were successful, what were failed, and different kind of timestamp around that. Okay, hope this was useful for you. Now, going to the pause, stop, and SLA, I won't take much time over here, to be honest, because let me tell you why. Because we saw this requirement from the customer, we tried to implement it using some kind of activity defined for the pause, and then when doing the reporting for the SLA, this activity duration time, we deduct from the SLA time to reduce the pause time and so on. Those kind of things we did, but we found it very complicated, a lot of error happening due to different, like someone didn't complete the activity, so it is still, there's no duration attached to this and those kind of things, right? So essentially, what I'm saying is that there's no pause and stop mechanism, at least in Dynamics CRM 2013 SP1. We tried to implement it using various mechanisms, but we found none of them worth, because you have to put a lot of customization to get the job done. Effectively, you cannot pause SLAs. All you can do is that calculate some pause time using some say custom activity, custom pause activity, and then deduct that time from the SLA time to run the reporting. Those kind of alternate mechanism you can do, but none of them is clean solution which can make customer happy. So my recommendation, if you are using Dynamics CRM 2013 SP1, out of box it has no way to pause and stop SLAs. However, and if you try to use some kind of unsupported way to play with system level workflows for SLA, wait workflows for SLA, it's unsupported. I will never ever recommend that. So these are the bad news, and custom solution is not very foolproof. It's not very reliable. It doesn't pause SLA. In fact, it just simply helps in some kind of a reporting where you can reduce the pause time from the SLA time, and pause time is captured inside custom activities. I won't suggest you go and take that kind of pain. Rather, wait for Dynamics CRM 2015, where this feature is going to be part of SLA. So in 2015, you can go and pause and stop SLAs. Okay, so it's worth waiting for that feature to come, rather taking all the pain to implement it by yourself. So that's it for now. That was all from SLA point of view in Dynamics CRM 2013. Very soon I'm planning to have a session for Dynamics CRM 2015 where I talk about what are the different extensions and features you have got into 2015. Meanwhile, please keep watching your videos, my videos I mean, and please place comments, subscribe, and let me know how I can make it better. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.